Wanna know why the leprechaun is so fucking popular out of all the other things in Irish mythology? Sure you do. It's because everything else in Irish mythology is terrifying. The Selkie? No. The Banshee? What? The Puka, the Dullahan. Every story about a hero or a giant ends with them bad. Everything is terrifying and scary and huge and monstrous and war laden, and that's just mythology. And truth be told, a lot of European mythology is basically just shit to scare kids. Don't go into the woods. And they're like, why? And then they're like, because the Baba Yaga will get you and eat you. And there's like a lot of that. But Ireland has kind of like a nice, weird little guy called the leprechaun. He's little. He was a cobbler. He like fixed shoes, and he would like hide your shit sometimes. And then when you found him, you were entitled to get his pot of gold that he like hid somewhere. But most of the time he'd like trick you into losing it. And in comparison to all the other horrific stories that you could tell about Irish folklore, the leprechaun seemed pretty benign and funny. It was one of those stories that it was funny as long as it wasn't happening to you, And during this period of time, perhaps you've heard of it, it was called the famine. Irish call it on Gortamor, the Great Hunger, because there was food and then it was all shipped out. But during this period of the 1840s, Ireland was still mainly an oral tradition and an oral culture, meaning that they told their stories by word of mouth. And nobody was really in the mood to hear about a guy tied to a rock during a battle so that he would die facing his enemies and never bow. Nobody really wanted to hear about the father that lost all three of his children to be turned into swans. As soon as they turned into humans, they poof to dust and floated away, because that's sad and people were dying all over the place and nobody wanted to hear that shit. But the leprechaun was pretty harmless. He bounced around, steals your shoes, stuff like that. And so when people started to move away from Ireland because of An Gortamor, they brought the story of the leprechaun with them to like cheer themselves up, and they started telling these stories not only in Ireland, but elsewhere where they started living, America, Australia, England. So the leprechaun kind of grew legs, and so to speak. And this part I heard from a tour guide, so take it with a grain of salt. It was said that people who were emigrating away from Ireland were very small. He said it was because people were shorter back then. I think it's because people who are small survive on less food, so they were living a little bit longer than the big people, and then they were moving out. You know what I mean? I think that's probably more it. So a lot of the people who were moving out of Ireland were small. Maybe they dressed kind of funny because they didn't have a lot of money. It was kind of like this picture of a leprechaun. And that's how the leprechaun kind of grew into what it was. And then Disney's Darby O'Gill started to popularize this version of the leprechaun, and he dressed him in green instead of the original red, starting to model this leprechaun off of the immigrants from Ireland that were coming in, and hence the ever popular picture of the leprechaun was born. And that's why the leprechaun of today looks totally different from the leprechaun of 200-300 years ago. It was shaped by history. And I think that if it wasn't so fucking tragic, it'd be pretty cool. All right, bye-bye. Bye. 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 Bye.